1. I've seen these figures quite a lot as a child. We're talking up in the 100 nights here, with a multitude of experiences that developed from it as I got to see them more and more. From your hat man to the cloaked figure, to seeing what's behind the actual shadow itself. I've had many physical experiences with them too. We're talking body-to-body aggressive encounters, where I had to fight them off of me. With that being said, I remember my first encounter with them. They appeared at the moment when I gained consciousness as a child, and I remember distinctively saying to myself at that point, I have the power, I must remember this moment, which was said in my head in English almost frantically and with immense joy at the same time. Mind you, English was not my native language at that point, so that's already bizarre to know that I was able to utter such words inside of me at the moment of gaining consciousness. Plus, on top of that, it was as if I was coming from a place that was searching to gain this power, consciousness. I remember at that point the sudden rush of realization that came unto me. That I can achieve anything in life that I desire like the world was in the palm of my hand. As this realization hit, I noticed multiple shadow people in front of me, behind the people that were in front of me at the time. I saw them and felt their terror, as if they were responding to my realization like I'm not supposed to be realizing all of that. Many years later into my adulthood, I've come to understand from that first encounter that these beings are afraid of consciousness, and that they are cowards. These dickheads are not that afraid to harass a child with consciousness, but an adult, however, they fear quite a bit, because you're physically much more capable as an adult and have a more developed ability of crystallizing the meaning of what you're seeing. A child that sees something strange would usually internalize what he or she sees way less critically than an adult would. Adults could ponder on what he or she sees or saw. It sticks with them, but for a child, most moments are like smoke, coming and going, taking memories of it with it. Those who say it's hypnagogic sleep, night terrors, sleep paralysis, have not really experienced these beings. Seeing something strange at the corner of your eye is also not experiencing them. Plenty of room to talk about sleep deprivation in that case. If you've truly experienced these beings, even if it's just once, the aura they emit, what they look like when you're looking at them dead on, then you can maybe start to understand what I'm speaking of. If you've had aggressive physical encounters and your experience with these beings is on another level, it becomes life-changing on all levels, dripping down to the very core of your existence. It'll shake something inside of you that's so close to you, and yet so alien when experiencing it for the first time, which can lead to someone putting in quite an effort in trying to forget about it and move on from it, so that they do not have to face the extreme existential dread that comes from such experiences. What I can conclude so far, based on the dozens, in the 100, of encounters with them I had, they are not some blip from another dimension. They seem to be here with a mission. Friendly? No, but cautious at best. In the early stages of encountering them, I did think perhaps they were friendly, playful beings. But it didn't take long for me to see that their response to friendliness is just outright nasty. They may for a bit accept your friendliness, only to later turn it into a nightmare. They are not like some cat where if you give off friendly sounds and signals, it'll come up to you and rub against you. These are not beings that need a medium either to bring them to some light or some other magical place. You're not their helper. It's laughable sometimes to see these so-called mediums, humans born with an amnesia about where they came from, not capable of encompassing the immense vastness of existence from its lowest and highest places, to try and guide these beings. People need more wisdom themselves than any wisdom they can give to such beings. We're not here to play the savior for them. I don't think such beings even have an applicable chapter about a savior in their existential domain. However, I see the experiences with shadow beings as an extremely important opportunity to get a better understanding of our existence. If I see them, what other implications does it hold to life? What meaning of life does it reveal? Facing such experience in life implies also the existence of something far bigger and unseen by most. It's like finding water. It means you'll have other life forms in it and around it. Exposed to a shadow being, what environment does that reveal in which we and they reside in? Clearly they are beings experienced by people all over the world to a varying degree. Is there a history that's unspoken of in our existence, played out behind the scenes? I'd be interested to read about it if someone can point out some possibly ancient text that speaks of these beings. Back to my experiences. I've seen them in various shapes. Man wearing a hat with a long trench coat, sometimes red eyes, sometimes no eyes. Man wearing some bulky hooded cloak, sometimes red eyes, sometimes no eyes. Some kind of white, skinny being. I believe these are the ones that hide behind those clothes. Number 3 in particular is interesting because I remember for the first time encountering the being in that shape. It's not like it undressed itself in front of me, but I knew what I encountered was a shadow being closest to its real form. This encounter happened in the middle of the night, when my parents went outside after my dad spotted a cloud-like object in the sky, with a bunch of lights hovering about 50 meters above the ground. That night I got in an aggressive physical fight with the being as described above, number 3, making me believe that the UFO that was seen for around 30 minutes by my parents had something to do with the being I saw. This being also communicated to me telepathically during that time, with something along the lines of, "You'll never get rid of us." This encounter occurred at a new house we moved into, and it's for the first time I saw that being in that form. Previous house had the typical shadow being figures. No objects teleporting poltergeist activity come with it when I was seeing these shadow beings. I used to have this toy truck I played with a lot in a room. Many times I'd turn my head around, look into a particular corner, turn back around and see that the truck had disappeared. I'd turn my head back and see it behind me, or come across the toy in some random other location in the house. It took a dozen experiences of this to start realizing as a kid that something strange was going on. 2. For context, this haunting, I guess I'll call it, happened from about 6 to 10 years old or so. I lived in a relatively new home in a small neighborhood in western Massachusetts. I had a loving family and, apart from what I will talk about here, a normal childhood. I'll start by saying I don't remember too much from my early childhood, but these experiences stand vividly in my mind as if they happened yesterday. It started off when I was about 6 with terrifyingly vivid reoccurring nightmares. Nightmares that seem out of place for a young kid who was never allowed to be exposed to violence or horror content. One common one included me trying desperately to jump up on my bed, while a large snake slowly approached me from my hallway. I would feel pure and unadulterated terror as it keeps getting closer and eventually struck me, to which I would wake up in a sweat. One of the worst ones was where me and my father would be standing in front of a hallway that branched off to the left and led into my parents' room. 5 to 10 humanoid-like figures would bound out of the darkness of the hallway and proceed to eat both me and my father alive. I could hear him screaming as they reached him, and when they eventually reached me, I would wake up tingling where the humanoids had first bit down onto me. Keep in mind I was very young when these dreams began, but they persisted for the next 4 years. Now, dreams alone are not enough for me to pour out my childhood trauma to strangers. I remember I began to feel like I was being watched in my bedroom at night. It seemed like the darkness in my room became oppressive, and I would be filled with pure dread and terror. Although I didn't know what. It felt as if something was going to happen, like every molecule in that room had stopped moving at once. This is when I first saw him. My bed was situated to where my head was against a wall, and the foot of my bed pointed towards a window. To my right was the door leading into my room, on the same wall my head was against. Just to the left of that door was a door on the adjacent wall, leading into a Jack and Jill bathroom I shared with my sister. There was just enough light from the window that I could see the outline of a tall black figure with the outline of a top hat sitting on its head. I don't fully remember what his face looked like. This was at least 10 years ago. But I do remember seeing some sort of liquid reflecting light where his face would have been. I quickly ripped the covers over my head and sat there frozen with terror, unable to move. This went on for many, many months. Every time that sense of dread filled me, I knew he was there but would not dare to look for fear that he would attack me. There were a few times that I was so convinced that I was not going to make it, I screamed for my parents, and they always came running to find nothing. My dad would always tell me, "Who's the scariest thing in this house?" To which I would lie and tell him it was, of course, my strong gusto father. He always assured me nothing would happen to me while he was there. But I knew if this thing wanted to do me harm, there was nothing he could do. Up to this point, by about 8 years old, the nightmares had become more graphic and appearances more frequent, always filling up that doorway, just standing, watching. Up to this point, I had never been physically touched or attacked by it. That was until one night, when I was bunkered down beneath my sheets, and that familiar feeling of dread washed over me. I froze in bed with the same feeling of anticipation. Only this time, something would finally happen. There was a scraping noise that I could tell came from the bathroom, and suddenly my leg was grabbed through the covers. I freaked out, bawling, crying, and beelined to my parents' room where I stayed for the night. I was never touched again, but he was there most nights until we moved states when I was 10. Of course, I tried to explain what was happening to me, but it was always brushed off, and I eventually stopped talking about it, as no one believed me, and I did not want to scare my little sister any more than I had already. Fast forward to 2 years ago, when I was 18, sifting through old storage boxes filled with my old school drawings and notebooks my parents had kept. I was flipping through a school notebook filled with grammar practice and such, when my heart sank. There, on my school notebook, was a drawing of the Top Hat Man. I practically shoved it down my parents' throats while shouting, "See, I told you it's a fucking Top Hat Man." My parents went pale and profusely apologized for not believing me. They even went as far to ask me if I needed counseling. In reality, I was relieved that I had some proof, and today I absolutely love horror as a genre. I guess maybe it gives me a feeling of control I never had as a kid. If anyone has any questions or insights to offer me, be more than welcome. If you had a similar experience, please tell me about it. 3. I grew up in a very active house in terms of the paranormal. I've seen UFOs, spirits, demonic entities, noises, and shadow people among various movements and bumps in the night. One of the most frightening experiences I've had on numerous occasions throughout life, even outside of the house, come to think of it, had to have been the entity known as shadow people. I had to have been maybe 13 tops at the time in this house in Grand Junction, Colorado. I'm laying in bed, going to sleep, when all of a sudden I wake up and can't move. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, sleep paralysis, blah, blah, but it's a bit more than that. All I can do is move my eyes, and the first thing I notice is this tall, hooded humanoid being standing at the foot of my bed, looking down at me. Obviously, at this point, I begin to panic. The first thing I do, being religious as I am, is command this entity to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. Poof. I have full control like that, and the being is gone. A night later, I decide to sleep in the living room. Not of fear or anything really, but mainly because I fell asleep watching Robot Chicken. I awoke sometime in the night or early morning, like 3 a.m., etc., and sat up, and sure enough, there's a little girl in Victorian-age clothing of sorts, standing there staring at me. She had a classic haircut from that era, I guess, what you'd call a bob cut or whatever. Being the young scaredy cat me, I hid under my blanket. When I looked up again, she was gone. The girl was surely a spirit, considering how innocent and just oblivious she seemed at the time, and if I could go back, I'd pull some Ghost Whisper stuff, and maybe talk to her or pray for her to find the light. But unfortunately, just won't have the chance. Hopefully someone did, though. However, my most recent experience was further confirmation of shadow people once again. I'm now 24, 23 or so, and I'm in a hotel room with my mom in Canyon City, Colorado again. I wake from probably the most vivid nightmare I've had to date, of what I'd swear was me falling into some fiery pit with hands coming from the sides, and screams, etc. Surely some hellish pit. I awoke, sat up, wiped my eyes, and yep, not one but 6 shadow people surrounding my full-sized bed. A complete circle of them, no facial features to speak of, just solid black silhouettes, pretty much. I do remember a bit of fuzziness around their outline, if that makes sense, almost like a black smoke surrounding it. Anyway, once again, upon prayer, poof, they were now gone at the mere mention of Jesus Christ. I'm now 25, and have since only had one other notable paranormal experience, and that was seeing a black-eyed kid in South Texas. Common theme was a solid black silhouette and zero movement. 4. So for starters, I've lived here 15 years, and over the years, my experiences with the paranormal have gotten more constant and more intense. It began with small things like frequent wall knocking, footsteps walking around my bedroom, not coming from my friend's apartment above me. I hear this stuff a lot, so that's not really a concern. Yes, a little creepy. But it doesn't bother me, not nearly as much as what else I'll list. The one time I was with my friend sitting in my room, and my mom left 15 minutes prior for an appointment. My friend and I were chilling on the bed, and we heard 3 loud knocks on my bedroom door. And she asked if it was my mom, and I was like, yeah, and I told her to come in. But she didn't answer, because my mom wasn't actually there. I had gone to open the door in case she didn't hear me, but there was nobody there. Another time, I had another friend over, and I went to get her some water from the kitchen, and I heard her saying something, so I said, 1 second. I was like 1 room over, so I wasn't more than 15 feet away, and I came back and asked her what she said. She looked at me and said, didn't say anything, but it was so clearly her voice. She's not the type to pull pranks, she's a teacher, and we're really close, and she knows I get super freaked out, so she wouldn't do anything like that to freak me out. I was on FaceTime with my friend one time, she's from Norway. I had my laptop on the desk, facing my bedroom door. I left the room to get something from the kitchen, and ended up having a conversation with my parents for 4 or 5 minutes. I came back, and she said that my door was swinging open and closed. I have this jewelry box from when I was a kid, you know, the ones with the ballerina or fairy, and it plays this little classical sort of tune. She said that she heard that music while the door was swinging open and closed. I was sufficiently creeped out. I've had other instances where I'll be on FaceTime and one of my friends will hear or see something while I'm in another room or not paying attention. Another time I was laying on my bed, and I felt as if something had slammed into my bed from underneath. The whole thing shook. Most of the time it's just knocks and footsteps inside the room I'm in. Things will move around, pretty basic. Maybe a month or 2 ago, I was sitting in my mom's bed watching a show. Both my parents were in the kitchen. And I saw a tall, black shadow figure pass through the hallway into my bedroom. I was so freaked out, but I was sure it wasn't going to harm me. Now, one of my friends can see, hear, and communicate with spirits, etc. And my ex-girlfriend, who I recently broke up with, is someone who can sense and feel when there is something present. I was walking with the 2 of them to the front hallway, and when we passed by the living room, they looked at each other and said, "You saw that?" They said, "Yeah, but I didn't see it." They told me it wasn't a harmful spirit, just a man who probably used to live here. Mind you, whenever something happens, my dog notices it too, and her ears perk up, and she'll be looking in the direction of the noise or whatever is moving. Now, by far, the creepiest thing that's happened to me was a month ago. Maybe a little more. I was taking a video of myself for TikTok, and I felt my hair get tugged. I don't think anything of it until I rewatched the video, and I saw a lock of hair get pulled away from my head. 5. I live in a historic mining town. I think my house was built in the 70s, but pretty sure there was another much older home in the same spot before this manufactured home was delivered here. It's a small lot, and there are areas of the yard where grass grows funny, like there's another foundation buried. Anyway, I have a couple things that have happened since moving here about 5 years ago. When I was digging in the garden, I found a gun half buried, like split in half, looked very old and rotted. Turned it into the police, never heard back about it. I have a friend that is in tune with spirits and paranormal things. She is not very comfortable with my basement at all, and says whatever it is that's down there isn't a very nice entity. Once was up in the middle of the night in my living room, had a strange feeling that the front door was going to open for some reason. Then I see my cat very slowly slinking towards the front door. Lo and behold, the door very slowly creeped open. Jumped up, locked and deadbolted it. Never happened again. One day, I was up at about 3 a.m. for whatever reason. Smoke detector in the basement started sounding. I didn't smell any fire, so I felt the basement door. Didn't feel heat. So I opened the door. Didn't see anything, so I turned off the lights and went down to check it out. Nothing. Checked out the smoke detector, pulled it off the ceiling, and it was full of water. WTF. Checked my boiler system and water pipes. Not one sign of a leak. Had to replace that smoke detector for the mysterious water damage. A few years later, same exact occurrence. Started sounding in the basement, went and checked it out again, nothing except a beeping smoke detector. No water this time, though. I was playing around with one of those talk-to-spirits apps. Didn't think it was that real. One day my cat started acting funny, so I pulled the app out. It was pretty late at night again. I asked if anyone was here a couple times, didn't get a response. But all of a sudden the smoke detector in the hallway, which was near me, started doing the low battery beep, like it just chose that exact moment for the battery to die. Got a little frustrated with these battery-operated smoke detectors, and installed a commercial system with intelligent smoke detectors. One day I was working from home, and the keypad in the living room started beeping. Went to check it out. Keypad says, "Trouble in system basement smoke." As soon as I read it, the keypad stopped beeping, and it went back to normal. The system is monitored with a resistor, so for whatever reason there was a drop in resistance in the wiring that goes to the basement smoke detector, which is mounted in the same spot. I have a theory that an old mining home may have rested in this spot where the new home was placed, and that it may have tragically burned down with someone inside. It would explain the weirdness of the smoke alarms, at least. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 255. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe. Comments are also appreciated, but optional. The other two are optional as well, but why pressure ourselves, eh? Okay, what day is this? It's Friday. Gonna keep the outro short because, I don't know what's been with me this past year, but it's just, I feel terrible in general, just terrible, terrible, terrible. So, I'm gonna go hide from the world under a duvet for a while. I'll see you all later. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.